Well, hi friends, welcome back. I am humbled and overwhelmed and so excited because after last week's podcast and even the week before, I have had so many emails and people reaching out saying, please, can you help us give us more information about creating the three-step process? So guess what? Back by popular demand, here we go. So I've interrupted the regular scheduled broadcasting for this special episode. So I'm going to talk to you about this three-step process a little bit more. And again, there's a lot more detail about this inside Clinical Business Academy, but this is kind of the high-level overview. But I did create for you a resource that you're going to want to download that will help you because I really want you to get this. Like, this is such an important part of what you do and what you offer and how you can really grow your practice. And that's what we do in Clinical Business Academy, is help you do that. And this is one of the ways. So this three-step process, let me break this down for you a little bit more. The first way I want you to think about it is that you have a very unique way of working with patients. It's unique to you. Now, you might say, well, I specialize in Hashimoto's and there's lots of other people that do it. You're right. There are, but there's no one that does it like you. No one. No one has your same personality. Nobody has your exact same knowledge. Think about all the seminars you've gone to and the trainings that you've had and the clinical experience. Oh my gosh, no one in the world has seen the exact same patients that you have. Nobody has the same background and perspective as you do. Now, they may be all aiming for the same target, but the lens through which you look at Hashimoto's, in my example, is going to be uniquely yours. So that's what we want to do, is take what you know, what you clinically know, and we're going to create a program or a proprietary process, okay? So that's the first term I want you to understand. It's a proprietary process. Kind of like if you read out an ingredient label and it's like proprietary blend. They don't tell you exactly all the percentages and all the things and how they derive the ingredients and where they get them and all the things. They just tell you that it's very special. That's what you're going to create, is the special proprietary program, okay? It's a unique approach. Now, we're going to use Hashi's as an example because everybody knows what that is. So let's just say for Hashimoto's that you know that you're going to break this Hashimoto's conversation into three distinct parts. So if I were to ask you, what would those three parts be? Might be something like, well, the first part would obviously be making sure their digestion is working, making sure liver detoxification is working, because that's where 60% of that T4 to T3 conversion happens. So liver is important. 20% of the hormone conversion happens in the gut. So maybe gut, like microbiome, probably making sure their diet is good. And we're getting out the foods that we know we're going to trigger Hashimoto's, which is gluten-containing grains, dairy for most people, maybe some cross-reactive foods. Are you following me? So we're thinking like, okay, step one might just be kind of like foundations, just like basic. Okay, so the overarching proprietary process is restoring, your Hashimoto's recovery program. We'll call it that. So in that Hashimoto's recovery program, the first step is foundation. We're going to call it foundations. You would want to put a sexier title on it than that. Then once that's done, you might say, that's going to take us a couple months. Okay. This is great for the patient because the patient now goes, okay, 2 months. We're going to be just working on this. They're very clear. It gives them an end point. Now, you might get it done in 6 weeks. Great, fine. It might take 2.5 months, but you're just going to communicate that to the patient as you go. So the first step is this 2-month process. Then you might say the next 2 months, we're going to work on what? What might be the next 2 months? Well, maybe you're going to work on specific nutrients for the thyroid, and you might start leaning in with like autoimmune support or gut. Maybe the microbiome comes in, that second piece in there. This is kind of where your unique spin on things kind of comes in more specifically. The first part is pretty basic. Like, it's always, step one is almost always going to be foundational stuff, and for however long you want it. The step two is more of your proprietary. What's your secret sauce? Like, what do you do with the Hashi's patients? And then usually the third step is going to be like optimizing and maintaining, or optimizing and restoring, or optimizing and revitalizing, something like that. It's kind of like, okay, now in phase 2, we did a lot of the hard work. Now in phase 3, we're going to make sure that we can sustain this for you moving forward. That makes sense? So foundations is the step 1. The middle step is just general, but the middle step is more about your unique way of doing it. And then that third might only be a month. Maybe your step 2 is 3 months long, or the third step is just a month. And that makes up your 6-month window. Now, just because you say it's 6 months, you communicate to the patient. It could be a little longer, it might be a little shorter, but this is in general what I find. What I can tell you is that patients are so grateful when they know what's coming and they know what to expect. Think about it from your perspective. You know, okay, my endpoint is there and it's going to take me 9 months to get them to go from where we are now to where I want them to be in 9 months clinically, right? All your clinical protocols, testing, whatever you're going to do. You know in your head that it's going to be that, but you just say, okay, come back in 4 weeks and we'll recheck you again and see how you're doing. Okay, I'll come back in 4 weeks. But we often do a really bad job of communicating to the patient what's coming, what's next, what does this look like? How does it break down into segments or sections or steps? Now, from your perspective, you know where you're going, but the patient's just showing up, showing up, showing up. And this is sometimes why they drop off, because they can't see the vision. They don't have the big picture. Having this proprietary process that's broken down into these 3 steps gives them that big picture. And it helps them feel confident in what you're recommending. And they're also confident that there's an end point. You're not going to be stringing them along for 47 years buying more supplements. They understand what the point of what you're doing is. So that's why this 3-step process is so incredibly important. Now, from the patient's perspective, they go home and they're very able to clearly articulate there's a 3 steps or 3 phases, whatever you call it. And they can articulate that to someone else rather than having to go home to their spouse and say, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to get started. There's no clarity. There's no roadmap. We're giving them a roadmap. So now let's talk a little bit more about the benefits for the patient. Not only are you giving them very clear direction, but it's personalized, meaning they feel like this program is personalized just for them. It's a structured process and you can tailor it as you need to. I mean, maybe the person comes in and they came to you and they just completed a liver detoxification and they relocated and it was just a month ago and now they're working with you. Okay, well, then you can adjust your step 1. If you're going to include detoxification in that step 1, you may just adjust it. You don't need that. So maybe step 1's a little shorter. Maybe step 2 is a little longer. You have the flexibility to be able to personalize it to them. You also, the benefit to the patient is that they can kind of measure their progress. So whether you're going to retest or redo a symptom survey or some objective type of a questionnaire, they'll be able to see that they're making progress. So this is really helpful as well. You're going to educate them along the way, providing like resources, training to kind of help them to make sure that they are feeling very empowered, that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they can obviously subjectively feel and sense the changes in the body. You are also helping them by holding them accountable. I mean, accountability is a big deal. The patients that are just left on their own, like, okay, I'll see you in a month. We've all seen that that sometimes doesn't work for some people who don't have the discipline to take all the steps and follow it all the way through. For you, it's way streamlined. You know, your appointments are consistent. You kind of can architect that out, like during phase 1, step 1, we're going to meet this often. During step 2, it's this often. You already know they're committed for 6 months. You can streamline that out pretty much and know exactly what it's going to be. The treatment protocols are consistent. The resources you're going to give them are consistent because it's all around Hashimoto's. So it's going to be basically the same every time with a little bit of flexibility built in. You're going to have way better time management because you don't have to be answering a bunch of questions and redesigning your protocol because something or other happened. It's very consistent for you, takes less time for you, for your staff, and it builds more trust with the patient. They are very confident in your ability to get them where they need to go because you've created this roadmap for them, this process for them. And then what are they going to do? If they have Hashis, they probably know other people who have Hashimoto's. They're going to just refer. It's going to build your reputation, get you better reviews, more referrals, etc. And then way less stress and burnout. So now let's talk about this naming thing. This is where everybody gets hung up. So this proprietary process needs to have a name. So we called it the Hashimoto's Recovery Roadmap. Okay, that's the name of your unique proprietary process. If you want to have it trademarked, fine. But your proprietary process. Now, each of the steps, or you don't have to call them steps, you could call them like 3 phases or 3 stages or 3 levels or 3 tiers or 3 parts, or name it how you want to. But these are the 3 things that you're going to put together. You're going to call them whatever. I'll call them steps. But these 3 steps, now for each step, we just want to create some clarity about what the step is. It's one thing to tell the patient, okay, I have a 3-step protocol or 3-step process. It's the Hashimoto's Recovery Roadmap. There's 3 steps. The first step is, 6 weeks. The second step is 3 months. And the last step is 6 weeks. And I'll let you know when we get there. That doesn't feel very good. What I highly recommend is that you write it out. So I'm going to tell you what needs to be in the description of each of the steps. That's going to help the patient go, oh, this feels so good. I know Dr. Miller is going to be able to help me. I'm sure of it, because you're clear about your objectives. Now, I'm going to go through these here, but before you panic, I have a resource for you in the show notes that you are definitely going to want to download. And this resource has got all of this information in it. Okay, it's got all of what I'm going to give you, a chat GPT prompt. There's some sample copies, some sample ideas. It's got lots of great information. So here's what you need to kind of think about writing out with regard to each one of your steps. So the first thing, we obviously need to give it a name, right? So step 1 is the foundations. I don't know. I'm not feeling very inspired right now off the top of my head. You could call it foundational reset phase, if you call it phases or step. So you're going to call it your foundational reset. And you're going to describe what that is. And it just kind of helps them go, oh, okay, we're doing foundations for 6 weeks. Great. The second thing is duration. I just said it. You need to let them know approximately how long. So then again, the patient goes, oh, I got that. Okay, 6 weeks. We're going to do this. I'm good. The number 3, you want to give them an objective. Like, what's the purpose of this? Well, if it's foundations, then it's going to be because we want to make sure that all the right pieces are in place before we go addressing the Hashimoto's, because if we get the cart in front of the horse, then the other work that we do isn't going to work. It's kind of like priming a house or prepping a house for paint. You have to scrape off the old paint and, put tape the windows. You have to get things ready before we can fix the problem. So this is what we're doing in this phase. Then you may want to add a little section that gives some basic protocol. And I don't want you to give away your secret sauce, but your basic kind of protocol is going to be like, we're going to do these types of things. You're going to have these types of recommendations, and we'll talk about very specific supplement protocols that you'll take that will help you get through this process as quickly as possible, or this step. Then you're going to want to put in there what the outcomes are. Like, how do we know when we've made it successfully and graduated through the first step or phase? What is the outcome that we want? Well, you're going to feel better. You're going to lose weight. Your energy is going to be a little bit better. Your digestive health is going to improve, and, whatever you want to put. And I have some sample for you, by the way, for like a foundations type, just as an example, but how you might describe a foundations, that step 1 kind of a foundation thing. I've got that sample for you in the resource. The next thing you want to identify is, what are the potential challenges they might face? This is, again, going back to last week's podcast, this is one of those things that they may not ask you what they really want to ask you. Like, am I going to feel tired if I do a detox? Am I going to be stuck to the bathroom? Am I going to have flu-like symptoms? Am I whatever, right? You want to make sure that you've kind of thinking about, like, what are the potential challenges that they face, and just write them. Just say, hey, I'm here for you, but these are some of the things that I often see during this phase. And if there are none, then write none, right? Say, this is really easy. We're going to get through this very easily. I don't expect any problems. But let them know, because it's a question that they're thinking. Then you're going to want to provide information about any other resources or support that you're going to give them. You may want to let them know how often you'll meet during this phase. So we're going to be meeting twice a month, every other week for 30 minutes. And you're going to, let them know about each week. I'm going to give you another resource to view that'll help you make progress if that's what you want to do. Then also, I like to mention if there's going to be any testing. So maybe like how we're going to monitor it. It might not even be a test. It could be, as I mentioned, like the system survey or some other kind of questionnaire that you have that you want to have them retake once a month throughout. Just jot that down. And then emphasize the fact that you really understand the need to be flexible. The flexibility is important. You may make really great progress quickly, and we're going to be able to move you into the next step or phase sooner. Or we may need to be flexible because life things happen, or you may get the flu in the middle of all of this or a head cold. And so we have to be flexible, but we'll work through that flexibility. And then lastly, I like to add their responsibility. I don't want them to get off scot-free. I don't want to have all the work, right? So I let them know this is what your responsibility is: to show up on time for our appointments, to follow the recommendations, to communicate with me if anything kind of goes awry, right? We want to make sure that we're communicating, staying in communication. Just write down what those expectations are. So, as I mentioned, in the show notes, there's a resource that you can download, but I'm going to give you where you go to get it. You can go to rondanellison.com/3 steps. Okay, 3 steps. That's where you're going to go, and you can download this resource, and it's going to give you all the things that we kind of just talked about, or at least the things that you need to know. And remember that when you're creating each of these steps, like the examples that I just gave you were for step 1 or phase 1 of your proprietary program. Then you're going to create another one for step 2 or phase 2. What's involved there? What's the name of it? How long is it? What are the expectations? What are the outcomes? How will you know you're making progress? What kind of tests are you going to do? Exact same questions, exact same kind of framework. And when you provide this to the patient, they feel so safe and seen and secure. And think about how this drastically contrasts with other people that are doing what you do. How many people do you know that provide this type of program for their patients around a certain health condition? Not very many. So already then, this establishes you as a leader in your field, a leader when it comes to Hashimoto's or whatever your specialty is. And it really sets you apart. People want to work with a specialist. And when you have a proprietary program or system that works, I don't want you just pulling something out of your backside and going, yeah, I think I'll do this. It'll be fine. You have to have a little bit of knowledge about it. Like, I know that it will work. It might be something as easy as like bloating. That one's pretty easy to resolve. Hot flashes, fairly easy to resolve. So fine, create your proprietary process about that. And then if you get tired of doing it, create another one. You're not locked into this forever. So I don't want you to feel like, oh my gosh, I can't choose. Can't choose a niche. Look, just pick something you're really good at that applies to, a good number of people that you see. Could be fatigue, could be anxiety is a really good one. Things that apply to the people that you serve, and then create this 3-step proprietary process that allows you to become the expert in your field. So we want to stop the drive-by wellness hookups. We want to stop the fee-for-service thing. They spend the money for the new patient appointment, they come a few times, and then they go away. This prevents all of that. You're creating a 6-month plan for them, and you're going to charge them for that 6-month plan. So you add up what's your cost going to be. And then you may discount it just a little bit on paper. You don't tell them that because we don't use the D word, but you don't do discounts. But you may want to, when you create that, you're going to say, okay, well, I'm going to see them this many times. And you can decide whether you want to include testing in the cost of the program or include like a supplement allowance every single month. You could do that if you want to. The testing is nice to include because it's good value for them. They don't have to feel like they're getting nickel and dimed. But again, that's, completely up to you. But that's what you want to do when you price it. You're pricing it for the full 6 months. And that's just built in. So you're on the hook to kind of get results. And at the end of the 6 months, you can say, listen, we've got it 80% of the way. I'm recommending that we go another 3 months. And then you can extend it for a little bit, but you have that conversation with them. because it's, again, we're allowing there to be some flexibility in here. They may have had to go out of town for a funeral for a month or go care for a sick family member, have a work trip that was unexpected overseas and they can't take supplements with them. Life just sort of happens. So flexibility is really key, but having this, at least the bones in place and the details for each of your 3 steps or phases, makes the patient feel so much more confident that you can get them results. So again, rhondanelson.com/3 steps, the number 3 steps. And you can download this resource. I've got a worksheet for you that'll help you fill in all of those 10 things for each of your steps. There's also a ChatGPT prompt if you want to name your process. So I gave you a prompt and you may have to fuss with it a little bit. I've tested it and it works pretty good. And then I've got some sample copy for you of what it might look like for a thyroid recovery roadmap and what each of the 10 things for step 1, phase 1, right? The foundations. I think we just, called it like foundational recovery, but that's all in there too. That sample copy is in there for you as well. So I hope this really helps. There's some program names in there. I've tried to give you everything I can to help you be able to create this process for yourself. It'll take a little bit of time. And if you do need some help, you always can schedule a quick consult with me. And I'm happy to evaluate it, give you my 2 cents, and then kind of give you some guidance to be able to move forward and make some changes and kind of get it off the ground. So again, go to rhondanelson.com/3, the number 3 steps, and download this resource. There's also a link in the show notes. And if you want to schedule an appointment with me, all you have to do is just send an email to support@rhondanelson.com and we will get you all situated. All right, friends, thanks so much for hanging out with me. I know this was a big one, but I wanted to give you everything I could on it because you were blowing up my emails the past week about asking, how do I do it? How do I do it? How do I do it? So here you go. Here's how you do it. We threw together a quick resource. So I hope you enjoy it. I'll see you next week on the podcast. Take care.